Welcome back. We're Nate and Jess, and we're Positively Jacked, where we dish real-time strategies on the nutrition, fitness, wellness, and lifestyle trends to prioritize positive psychological habits and best practices. Our goal for each episode is to relay helpful information and topics relating to health, nutrition, lifestyle, and habit formation. In addition, we give real-time strategy that can be applicable to anyone in the same day to help them benefit themselves.
Woo!
Nate made me do the intro this time.
Yes, I did.
And then he was dancing around as I did the whole thing, being entirely distracting.
Yep, that's my job. Just make you do things that are slightly uncomfortable.
Well, welcome back, guys.
Welcome back. This episode 10.
10. We are on 10.
10. We are on track to finish more than a dozen this year.
I know. Well, I mean, consider we only need two more after this to hit a dozen. So
well, and was our goal at the beginning of the year was one every 6 weeks, I think.
Yep. No, so we were real ambitious in the beginning. We're like weekly.
I don't know if I ever legitimately agreed to weekly, but oh, the mind was hopeful. I was quote unquote motivated.
Oh, great transition. Great transition into why we're here today. We're here to dive into the role of motivation in fitness. It's a hot topic. People get real twisty around that word alone. So what if motivation isn't the key to success? While motivation can give us a push, we know that we're not always motivated. We explore the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation and why relying purely on motivation might be a fallacy. Instead, we're going to discuss our favorite topics, discipline, habits, and why a strong why is a real driver of the success.
I love that. So good.
Well,
sometimes, we've seen it. People come into the gym all the time. People come up to you all the time, me, family members, all this other stuff with that gusto behind them, that motivation. For some reason, all the chemical mixture came together. And they're like, I want to make a change. And then what?
I mean, life happens, right? I mean, everybody sets that big goal, but we live in a world where if I was looking at an Eisenhower box, we got to focus on the things that are on fire. And so if your goal isn't always on fire, it's going to get replaced by all the things that come up. Your kid getting sick, your kid having an hour and a half of homework every night, crazy meeting schedules. It just happens.
Yeah. The world doesn't form fit to what we need to move forward.
Right. And it's not always in our best interests.
No, it's not. That's half the experience, is having to navigate the things, as we talked about last time, right? The journey itself is an adventure that should be enjoyed thoroughly throughout.
Yep.
On that note, we're going to be going into some challenges of audience perception, motivation, key to fitness, success, and problem solution narrative. So here's, I guess, the first thing that I want to kind of break into is understanding between extrinsic and intrinsic. And these are terms that get thrown a lot around when it comes to motivation. And even when we chart a course, we need to understand it beyond just throwing out around the fitspiration of content or whatever that initial drive was, or whatever that initial kick was.
Yeah.
And so we barely touched on this one of our last episodes, self-determination theory.
Yeah.
And one of my favorites because it's sort of a meta theory, because it's not just necessarily comprised and pushed forward. It's comprised of several mini theories. But in short, it starts with the idea that individuals have a natural tendency towards growth and development. And it comes heavy into play here in a few minutes when we go a little bit more into the extrinsic and intrinsic. But what you need to understand about SDT, self-determination theory, is that the three psychological needs that are essential are autonomy, competence, and relatedness. So 3 areas that resonate way more towards a specific type of motivation that we're about to talk about than the other, right? And so go back to what we were just saying before, extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. So extrinsic motivation, what do you think of?
Oh, I saw a girl in a magazine who looked really good in a swimsuit, and I want to look like that too.
Yep. It's a great one.
I know.
Now, I'm gonna go right into the challenger, because this is why I love SDT and the 3 needs of it, right? Relatedness. you're a girl. That's about as far as it goes, right?
Yeah.
That's the relatedness. Not exactly heavy on it, but it's an extrinsic means of motivation.
Right.
So it's kind of weak in that,
Yeah.
right? And then we go to the opposite side, intrinsic. What's an example of intrinsic motivation?
Uh, I want to feel good in my body and know that if I put on certain clothes, I'm just always going to like the way I feel.
I love that because I want to feel good in my body. Well, relatedness, it's hard to get more related to yourself
Nope.
and your own
Nope.
body.
Can't get more personal.
Right. And then autonomy. That's huge. You want something for yourself by yourself. Like, doesn't get more autonomous than that. And then competence. You need to have a little bit of understanding, a little bit more knowing about yourself to know if these things are going to resonate, if it's going to give you a sense of joy, so it's a sense of fulfillment.
Yeah.
So you can see how we're working our way around that extrinsic motivation, intrinsic motivation. They're not necessarily at odds, but one of them definitely resonates harder with the initial step of the process of motivation in general.
Absolutely.
So, real challenge for most of us is we begin these fitness journeys driven by extrinsic goals. Like you said, I saw a magazine or, side-by-side comparison. I lost a competition, so on and so forth. With these are great for getting us started, but when you rely on them, you see how when we start going to those SGT principles that they sort of crumple.
Yeah.
Right? And we start realizing that we're either reaching too far, not associating with ourselves. And it's that initial, I want to say it's almost like an initial anxiety towards a change, right? We know something needs to change. And we grab something that seems to make sense outside of ourselves rather than taking the time to look within a little bit.
I think there's also an element of we are bombarded by messaging and media and content. And so it's easy just to feel like it's just hitting us all at once.
Mm-hmm.
And you're grabbing at it knowing intrinsically something needs to change.
Mm-hmm.
But before you can even dig into that, double click into it even, so you're being bombarded by something else. You have no center force.
Right. Yeah. No, and that's a big one. We talk about that a lot too, is people kind of taking time to know yourself a little bit more before decisions like these are made. They're not necessarily fleeting. And that's really how extrinsic motivations are. It's like, I saw this magazine one time. Well, that magazine got thrown out 3 weeks ago. Where's your motivation now?
Yeah.
Damn. I know it's a little dramatic, but it's kind of the problem with it, right? If you rely a little bit too much on it, you're putting your motivation, you're putting this fuel, if you will, into something that is going to sustain you through a change. And it's such a house of cards. It's so delicate and also fleeting.
It's not that it doesn't have its place though.
No, not at all. But like I said, I see it as more that initial fuel and that initial kick to something it's that spark, right? Extrinsic motivators are great sparks, but they are horrible fuel.
Yep. That's a great analogy.
T-shirt idea. Write it down.
There we go.
So you made some notes, and I want you, if you wouldn't mind, to go into the motivation wave.
Oh yeah. So motivation wave, and I thought it was the perfect named thing once I found it. A concept introduced by behavior science BJ Fogg. Also a great name. The idea is that motivation isn't something that stays constant. It's like a wave that ebbs and flows, which, I mean, like we just said, you're constantly being bombarded by messaging and things that tell you should be doing something. Mm-hmm. But they're all a little different. They all come from very different sources, often sources that are not complete information sources. And when you're out looking to start your new routine or your big goal, your motivation is obviously peaked.
Yeah.
Think about the last time you started that New Year's goal, or you started Monday with a fresh diet and a full fridge of food. But a couple weeks in, you notice, ooh, I didn't make enough food for the week. I'll just swing by, Panera, whatever. Or, I didn't start that rowing workout I was supposed to start. I'll just start tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. So. And then it gets pushed and pushed. And I think this is pretty applicable to a lot of the people we've worked with.
Yeah.
Right. And one thing we want to kind of cover along as we go through this is journeys that we have personal experience with. So I'm not going to name names, but I do have a client, an athlete that I've worked with now for about 2.5 years. And the original narrative when we first started working together was they want to compete in CrossFit, right? That's a big part of our space. And they were very adamant about that. And one thing I have is just a no exceptions rule with anybody I bring on as a competitive athlete is I say, I have to have you for more than a year. And they're very curious about that when it first steps up. And it's because I have to see an athlete through an off season, a preseason, an in season, and a postseason. And if you don't have that data to collect, you can't honestly fairly tell them how competitive or how far they are willing to or going to be able to go for that extrinsic means of motivation without having as much data in the objective initially. And when they first came, it was fall. They were feeling strong. They wanted more than their gym's programming. And we started getting going. And the change in programming alone and the soundboarding between us, the dialogue we had, was all the motivation fuel they needed because they were taking themselves seriously as an athlete for all this change. Well, then fast forward into a competition season and nagging injuries, lifestyle changes, stress factors that took them away from certain things like being able to eat enough, being able to recover enough and well enough for a sport that is now something that you can't really do part-time. You are either fully in with the measures and processes or you're not. And lo and behold, a couple of tough workouts, not qualifying as ahead of where their preconceived expectations were. And that motivation went to next to nothing. And the reason being was because in such a short time frame, they saw this lofty extrinsic goal of being a high-level CrossFit competitor start to fleet. It started to look way further down the tunnel than they originally anticipated.
Oh, yeah.
Then became the question of, now what? Because as you noted before, motivation always dips. Life happens. Obstacles come up. Waves crash. You get caught up with work, family obligations. You can't expect that initial spark to sustain you.
Yeah. And in her case, I feel really like this huge goal hit the wall of what it would actually take too.
Yes.
I don't think anybody, and we're in this sport, like I don't think anybody really understands because nobody posts their entire day that's in that sport. Like not many people post everything they're doing all the time that is part of their training process.
Yeah. And I will say a little side caveat here. All those athletes that you follow that put up, oh, it's my active recovery day. I'm doing yoga, pool time, this, that, and the other. No. They might be doing that, but real athletes at the top level of this sport and many others, you know what their recovery day is? They don't move from the couch. It's like the laziest day you could ever conceive because their body is exhausted.
Oh, yeah.
It is exhausted. Don't believe everything you see on social media, kids. These athletes are torched. The 30% of the time that they are not training, they are exhausted because in our sport, you're testing all parameters of fitness.
Right.
So little PSA, know what you're getting into before you jump into it. But, and then once we hit that wall, right? Once that motivation, that spark gets challenged, then what?
Oh, yep.
One of our favorite words, reframing.
Yep.
I love it. I say we use that. We did like a reframing counter on our podcast. So many times, just nice little buzzer goes off. But and a question that we ask all the time: why? The power of why. Reframing the purpose behind that initial spark.
And I don't know if Simon Sinek was the person who coined it, but I feel like he's the one who is running with it. So to start
absolutely.
with why is like an amazing. I'm not a huge Simon Sinek fan. Most people tell you that I've complained about him at least once in our friendship, but
Sure.
It's a good book. And he emphasizes in that book uncovering the deeper purpose behind your actions.
Yeah.
So what's that look like in fitness? It's about shifting from that surface level goal, like losing weight or building muscle, to understanding the emotional core reason. In this person's case, they want to be a competitive CrossFit athlete.
Yep. They want to see and realize their athletic potential in the sport of CrossFit.
Yep.
And I'm going to take a little side caveat because I love Simon Sinek, but also years ago, and for any hardcore meatheads in the fitness space, there was an article that shifted around for quite some time by Charles Poliquin, Poliquin Systems. A lot of people love Charles for German volume training, all sorts of stuff like that. But he wrote a blog article called "The Myth of Discipline," and I loved it because discipline in and around the why of things, you have to be disciplined to be able to execute, right? But what he framed it as, and I love this because usually a deep-founded, emotionally charged why is love. And before anybody thinks I'm getting all like crazy hippity-dippity here, it's not like, oh man, I love this. It's more of if you can find what you love at the core of what is pushing you towards that motivation, what motivates you in that moment, like what sense of love and purpose like resonates under that. If you can find that, then discipline isn't what you're looking at. You're doing these acts and these items out of love for fill in the blank, and it makes it resonate and hold so much stronger on your why. It's like, why do I want to lose weight? Because I love my family and I love my body. I love myself enough to prioritize those things that translate to proper health. Why do I want to compete? Because I love the feeling of peaking my physical body.
Yep.
And those resound a lot harder than, I'm fill in the blank CrossFit competitor. I want to be like X.
Yeah. That resonates personally. So, I mean, I don't think we've talked about it yet, but while we were at the games in that crazy headspace we were already in, I got asked to be on a world record attempt for rowing with a group of masters women. And of course, I'm looking at all these super fit people at the peak of their sport and their physical state. And I'm like, yeah, I need to do something hard. And if any of you know, like, we have a busy schedule. I have kid in school, like all the things. And I am, in that mental space now where I'm like, why did you do this? How are you going to maintain a 207 row pace for like 5 20-minute sessions? How are you going to train to this? But exactly that, exactly what Nate just said. You have to reconnect with exactly why you signed up for it, because deep down, you are excited to be among people doing something you love and feeling really in shape.
Side note, when she says you, she means me.
Yes.
This is Jess. Jess loves being under the magnifying glass, if you did not know, and letting us see behind the curtain behind her emotional motivations. But I do love that. I love that
exactly.
that resonates, because if you think about the idea, if you were just to say, I'm going to be on a world record attempting routine, that in itself is like cool motivation, but it's also equally terrifying.
Oh yeah.
Right? That's a big thing. And that's
right.
Okay to acknowledge, but it's like you get invited to this and then you start searching, why would this be important to me?
Right.
And for you just said it. I love that. That's we haven't talked about that. And I do love that you just unpacked that a little bit, because
oh yeah. Yep.
For me, knowing you, getting that out into the ether a little bit, saying it and acknowledging it, that's pretty dope.
Yep, have to declare it. Hannah's doing it with me also. So there was a moment where everybody was introducing themselves on our text thread, and we have a semifinals. We have 2 semifinals athletes. We have some really fit people, really specialist rowers. And Hannah texted me on the side, and she's like, "We're the least fit people on this rowing team, aren't we?" And I'm like, "Probably, but everybody's got to have the people that just come for the fun and dancing, and that's going to be us."
Hell yeah. Hang on. I also love that if you really think about it, you're going to be there for the fun and dancing while also making a world record attempt.
Exactly.
Like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm excited.
That's cool. Why? I get to have fun and dance around and row with my friends for 24 straight hours. Oh, and by the way, we're going to try to break a world record.
Yep.
It's pretty cool.
I know.
It strengthens long-term commitment. If that's not resonating hard enough, gang. Like if you have an emotional tie to your why and enough time to diagnose it and like kind of unpack it, it means longevity, because anytime a challenge pops up, your thought doesn't go back to the magazine clipping. Your thought goes to, I love being fit. I love spending time with my friends. I love treating my body and scheduling time for my body. That's what it's going to fall to. And then that's a little bit easier, if anything, to reignite that spark once more, twice more, and all the times needed to see yourself through to the end.
Yeah. So I guess the question is, if somebody's sitting listening to this and they're like, I don't even know if I've ever really thought about my why, like, what would you even tell them?
First things first, do you have time?
Yeah.
It's a funny thought, but you know, that's a conversation with yourself. And anytime you want to have a good, meaningful conversation, you got to set aside time for it.
Yeah.
But it's a purposeful conversation, right? Do you love this? Does this resonate with you? Like, if you don't take that time to actually unpack it and kind of organize your thoughts on it, then it's always going to be a little bit disconnected.
Yeah. I always do that thing of, if I'm having irrational feelings, which, we all fall into that pit of like telling myself untrue things.
Mm-hmm.
And I just start unpacking it. Why do you feel this way? Okay, well, why did that? And then why did that? And like, eventually you get to the truth.
Yeah.
I challenge my assumptions by asking why until like you kind of run out of steam. It's like a mind map with one road on it.
Well, it gets rid of assumptions and excuses and any of those things that, to you are to anybody's mind are kind of like roadblocks, right?
Right.
You don't want to be stuck in your way of thinking, but one of the few people that's going to get you out of there is yourself.
Right. That's exactly it.
So, all right. Well, now let me ask this. We're all about real-time strategies.
Yeah.
Strategies and staying consistent, because now we've kind of unpacked like, okay, your initial motivation.
Yep.
Finding a little deeper meaning to that motivation in setup to make sure that you are moving forward of a course that's a little bit more along the lines of fulfilling to you and not something extrinsic, like a little bit more intrinsic motivator and fuel to the start, but you're going to hit obstacles. You're going to hit hurdles. So practical tips on staying consistent.
I mean, I think it's that mental piece that you just said. It's stating the thing is the fact. Motivation is going to dip, right? And when it happens, you have to have something to do about it. And I think one of the favorite things that I have is if this, then this, those implementation intentions, like pre-plan the response to the obstacle, right? If I don't do this the way I set out, what do I do then? If I wake up late tomorrow and I have less time than I planned for this rowing workout that I have planned, we do some rowing workout with something else added later. Like those pieces.
Right.
Are a great place to start.
Fun fact, gang, in the sports psychology realm, we call this performance scripting, where we intentionally make athletes write out a script of their own competition. I did it with a few weightlifters and CrossFitters, and it's fascinating because you'd be surprised at how often very similar hurdles pop up and they've already mentally scripted it and pictured it in their head.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I always thought as a person with anxiety, everybody thought that way. Like I script every worst case scenario or every possible road to everything because my brain never stops, but that's intentionally something somebody does.
I want to point out a critical difference though here. That is out of panic, fear, stuff like that.
Exactly.
We're flipping it right now. You're saying, I want to do this. Why? Because X, Y, and Z are important. If X, Y, and Z are important, then I'm going to put X or, A, B, and C into practice. So it's one of those things where this is less on the reactive side of being fearful and more like, no, I want this to stay true for a week, a month, a year, and moving forward. Slight difference there, but also very critical in as far as consistency and making sure it's rooted in a proactive, proactive means and something that you're going to be able to come through with rather than reactivity, trying to plan for all worst case scenarios.
Yeah. No, I think that's an important call out. I just think I remember when you first did it to me,
Oh
and I
God.
was like, you were trying to like, it was you with your smiley face and you're helping me through this idea. And I was like, no, no, no. My brain has thought of all these things
Yeah, that's fair.
already.
That's fair.
Um,
I understand.
I think that leads right into another one. It's the reframing, right?
Yep.
My internal dialogue from fear in a reactive state to a more positive. I have to work out, or I have to do this
Hmm.
because it aligns to my why is an important one.
Right. Kind of, I get to.
I get to.
Yep.
Always I get to.
I choose to.
Yep, I choose to today makes a huge difference. And tomorrow at 5:30, I will choose to row in the dark in the garage.
Hang on. First of all, in a modern world, I love that Jess is choosing to row in the dark and just commune with the demons.
If I can't see the rower, am I really suffering? I feel like this is also an important time to call out that rowing is my least favorite thing in CrossFit.
So
other than maybe double unders.
You picked a hell of a thing to stay motivated for through the end of the year.
Again, blame the mental state of the weekend when I chose this.
Nah, I love it because I was bad at running.
That's true, and now you are really good at it.
For a juggernaut, sure. Most people my size and dimensions don't choose to go run 10 miles on every Thursday, but but it was one of those things. You just,
for a man of your size, you're doing great.
Yeah, thank you, Nick Bear, for being my example. I want to throw back a little bit to some previous episodes, just because I always like to, because I think what we talk about all kind of encompasses into a similar message. Habit stacking, James Clear.
Yep.
Right. That's another effective strategy for these moments where when motivation and all this stuff wanes and you hit those hurdles. Habit stacking, pair your fitness goals with existing routines. And it sounds silly, but at the same time, something as subtle as before I sit in my desk chair, I'm going to put it on its lowest setting and I'm going to hit 15 air squats. And then I'm going to sit down. Or, before I bed down for the night after dinner, I'm going to walk around the block.
Yep.
Small things like that where you have those windows, but it's a smooth continuity is a big effective strategy that we've mentioned many times before.
Yeah. Low motivation makes everything feel like it's going through water. And so if you can just make your life easier in those moments to keep pushing your consistency, huge. Same with like chunking up those habits into smaller pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So it makes all the difference. Yep.
Mr. Fogg.
I know. Mr. Fogg is like my new favorite person.
That's such a good name too. Oh gosh. I will say that there's two very big themes with all of these things that we're talking about, gang. Scheduled time. You got to have it. Yep. Right. You have to prioritize time. Time is the one thing that is a constant here. And be creative. Open creative blocks, right? Schedule it in and then allow yourself the freedom to think differently, to try different methods and stuff. Because with those two, you're giving yourself the space to figure it out. But if you're not giving yourself the space to figure it out, it's going to be on a reactive base. You're going to have some sort of rush or anxiety that's going to make you try to, or that's going to insist that you grab to something that might not resonate as hard as we want that original why.
Yeah, I think that time piece is so critical. I have a pretty busy meeting schedule day by day just because of time zones. And I honestly got now 2 training blocks that are permanently blocked for all 5 days on my calendar, one for the morning until about 9:15, and then one in the evening around Caitlin's pickup time. And so I don't necessarily use both, but they are both there and they stay there.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, look at you prioritizing you first. What?
And people know what they are. I make them public, so then I'm accountable. People know that that's important to me. And now that I'm doing the row, I've got it labeled on my calendar because they know the goal and I'm accountable to it.
Wait a minute. Are you saying that it's a good supportive component to include people and groups into things that you're trying to achieve?
Absolutely. Mostly because I don't want to look foolish in front of other people. So if I tell them what I'm doing, I have to be more serious.
Sure, but also they get to see your amateur status trying to work through it in the process.
It's true. It's true.
Acknowledging vocally to the group, I'm a white belt right now, gang. Get used to it. You're going to see me working on this.
Yep. I am pretty, I think too often we try to hide what we're working on from other people. And I've kind of been trying the opposite. And I find that a lot more people are accommodating in areas they could be more flexible at work.
Yeah.
Because they understand what I'm trying to achieve on the side.
Absolutely. They feel a part of it, even if it's just knowing that you're doing it.
Yep. It makes a difference. And I work in a pretty, unforgiving scheduled environment. So to have that response so far has been pretty cool. But I feel like
any tools.
So some of the other ones that I know we've harped on before, but we will keep harping on in the name of consistency is journaling.
Oh, write them down, gang. Your brain ain't that big. I love it. Journaling. Anytime journaling gets brought up, I'm so passionate about it because I know how freaking frustrating it is to have everything bouncing around in your head. It's, even if you're just writing random thoughts, seemingly random thoughts, at minimum, you're getting a space for clutter, and then there's a physical location for that.
Yep. And it doesn't have to be flowery. It doesn't have to be like your 4th grade idea of what journaling looks like. Like I literally have a burn book next to my desk, and during the day when I get angry, I write all the things I'm angry at, and that's my work journal.
I have screenshotted 750wordsaday.com breakdowns of my journals to Jess, where it's like, what are you feeling most? Rage, fear, considering that's all you wrote about for 1,000 words.
Harness the productivity of rage sometimes.
You gotta, but also it's one of those things like your headspace is great and our brains are very fascinating in that they can handle so much. But man, is it helpful to have a physical space to put something out, right? Same way that therapy works. A journal is just a good place to try to get it all out and kind of give it a physical space other than bouncing around between the years.
Yep. And again, we just talked about it, having accountability with other groups and people. Such a big deal. That's why he shares his journal with me. It's like a twofer.
Yes. Yep. And then last one, because we live in the technology age, apps and trackers.
Yep.
I'm always this needs to be a little bit last. Only because I know that when we get into the realm of apps and trackers, you also get into the realm of technology that can suck your attention at a moment's notice. You pull up MyFitnessPal or something like that, and then all of a sudden 3 Facebook notifications, Instagram, all this other stuff pop up, and then you are on the infinite thread of TikTok and stuff.
I'm convinced you have a camera in my office because that's exactly what I do sometimes.
This is exactly, I'm sorry for everybody that sends me stuff on TikTok. I literally only get on it to post for us. I have not once scrolled on TikTok. Never once. Can't do it. I can't do it. I know how dangerous it is.
Like a weird version.
But having said that, certain apps and trackers, MyFitnessPal, TrueCoach, Stacks, they're productivity tools, right? They're tools to be used. Make sure you have parameters of them, stuff like that, but they are helpful in creating these processes and accountability on those. Something as simple as your Google Calendar can be considered a tool as well.
Yeah. And I even passively using technology, I put my why in front of me wherever possible. It's on the background of my phone currently. It's on my desk here as I'm working. Like, put it in front of you on these apps in some way so that every time you're about to pass through something, either to track a habit or if it's a time waster, putting that goal, you're just putting your why in front of you. Mm-hmm. It goes a long way.
Long way. The world is made of distractions and things that'll challenge you. So it's up to you to put the reminders in the forefront.
Yeah.
Oh, man. We've covered a lot.
I know.
In a fairly brief amount of time, but I feel like a lot of it was very actionable.
Yeah, I think so too. I think, embracing your why really kind of helps us create that strong, meaningful reason behind our journey. And I think there are so many ways with technology and people and to keep it in front of us.
Absolutely. And remember that it's in waves, right?
Yeah.
The initial burst and the initial spark is powerful, it's potent, and that's awesome. But it's unfair to expect that to carry you for weeks, months, and possibly years on end. Some of these things have to marinate naturally. Some of them are going to utilize things that come in over time because that's just the way they work. You got to be okay with that. It's just find the things that resonate hard with that motivation originally. So when the motivation dips, you have those reminders up in front of you. You have that friend asking you about it. You have those measures in place to make sure not only is motivation re-sparked, but also it's pulling into the fold the whole like idea behind why you started and what deep, intrinsic thoughts that you went through to get started in the first place.
Yep. Use the spark, but build the fuel.
Yes.
So
more
solid.
More t-shirts. And as always, build discipline and habits, but also those disciplines and habits need to be rooted in the important why, the intrinsic means of motivation for you, and then make sure that they are stacked on top of that. The one has to come first, right? We just talked about it with the self-determination theory is like intrinsic goals or intrinsic motivation first is way more of a winning recipe than extrinsic first, because extrinsic will fall like a house of cards.
Every time.
Every time. All right.
Great episode, friend.
Last bits. Give yourself time. Give yourself opportunities to be creative with this stuff. Then once you kind of give yourself time and figure it out, then create those habits. Use any of the tools that we have. And if you have any questions on those or are wanting to expand on those, you know where to find us.
We are tools to help you at any time.
I love that. We're tools. I'm just a big old tool. Oh, man. All right.
Have a great week, everyone.
And stay positively jacked.